Apologies, I thought I put everything on the desk, but I mustn't. So if you could just bear with me for 1 second. Hello, everyone. You haven't missed anything yet. We're just getting started. Welcome. I'd like to open the meeting at 6:01 p.m. and start by acknowledging that we meet on the lands of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation and pay our respects to elders past and present. I would just like to comment on the referendum. I think the City of Vincent has been incredibly proud to have a position of supporting the Uluru Statement from the Heart and the Voice, and just reflecting on Sunday, I think we probably all acknowledge that there's a bit of pain and heartache to work through in the path forward for reconciliation, but just want to assure our Buria Elders Group and our community that the City of Vincent will continue our reconciliation pathway. And I do have to say, whilst the result was not what the City of Vincent had hoped for, I do just want to acknowledge the Perth electorate and the City of Vincent residents who voted in this election. Many of the booths show that in Vincent we had incredible support for the Voice. Some of our booths in North Perth had 70% support. Others through Mount Hawthorn, Highgate were in the high 60s. And I just wanted to acknowledge that because I think it's really important that we understand that our community does support strongly recognition, listening, consultation, and that is a real guiding light for us in terms of our reconciliation journey as we continue to move forward. So I just wanted to acknowledge that that is what has happened in the City of Vincent and to thank our community for their support and to ensure that we'll continue that journey along with our community, with our local schools, with our sporting clubs, our community groups, our workplaces that are all supporting reconciliation. Oh, thank you. Apologies, members on leave of absence. I'm very pleased to say we have a full house for our final meeting of the term. So I will go to public question time and receiving of public statements. Members of the public gallery, you're very welcome to approach the microphone and say a few words if you wish to. No one's speaking tonight, just observing. Okay, well, thank you very much for being here. I'll then note that we did have one written response to public question time this evening, but otherwise I will close public question time. So then moving on to applications for leave of absence. Are there any CEO or any last minute requests? Councillors, some of us are seeking permanent leaves of absence tonight. Okay, no. All right, receiving of petitions, deputations and presentations. We have none this evening, so I'll move to the confirmation of minutes, and that is for the ordinary meeting of the 19th of September 2023. Can I please have a mover and seconder to adopt the minutes? Moved by Councillor Hallett, seconded by Councillor Castle. All those in favour? I just do governance. Is it okay to abstain? Must vote. Sorry, Councillor Apollo, you must. You'll do no. Okay. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. Declarations. Oh, announcements by the presiding member. Well, can't not make an announcement this evening. It is the last council meeting, and I do apologise for those who some of this may be a little bit of a repeat, but it's important to say this at the council meeting too. So I did just want to say thank you. I'd like to start by saying thank you to our CEO, David McLennan, to our directors, our managers, our exec assistant team, and to all of the staff that work within our many and diverse areas. So our parks, infrastructure and engineering teams, our community and business teams, including its communications team, who I've worked very closely with in Christy, Darcy and Alana, who have weekly meetings with me. I'd like to say special thank you to them. To our Beatty Park Leisure Centre team, our strategy and development team, each and every one of our staff here at the City of Vincent, an enormous thank you. Incredibly proud of the way our staff undertake local government, and they're an incredible standout with their professionalism. They strive to do so much. They interact with our community in a very positive way, and they bring pride to public service every single day. And I see it in the office, and I see it in the streets, and I see it in our parks, and I see it in our town centres as I'm moving around the city. And I'm always so impressed and appreciate it, both as a mayor and as a resident. I'd like to say thank you to those that I've worked closest with every day. Kylie, my executive assistant, has been an incredible support. And when you are a mayor and you're not running the administration, it can be a team of two. So I just want to say thank you to Kylie, who has an incredible work ethic, has worked so hard and has just managed the office of the mayor incredibly well. I'd also like to extend my thanks to Manuela McKay, who is David's EA, but who has a very close working relationship with our side of the office over here, who has just been a wonderful person to work with throughout my time. 10 years, Manuela has been here in all of it, and it's been an absolute pleasure to work with Manuela. And I'd like to say thank you again to David for your leadership of the team, for the way that you lead by example, for the values that you bring to the City of Vincent, the fact that you love to innovate and problem solve. And I think that you're always looking for new ways of doing things and new problems to solve. And I just appreciate that so much, David. It's been wonderful to see you flourish as a CEO in your first CEO role, and to see you grow into that role and to take on such challenges. To Wendy, taking the minutes every month, twice a month for briefing and for council meetings, and to all of the staff here in this room who have to do the late shift. Thank you so much for, listening and answering and being so incredibly professional, for being so eloquent in your responses, so across your brief. Jay, particularly for directing us back to page 3 if we haven't perhaps read it. Our CFO for just being an incredible explainer of financial matters in a way that I don't think we've ever experienced in finance before. To our Director of Infrastructure, Peter Varis, for taking on this role after many years in governance and sorting out our assets in a really positive way. To our governance team, to Jocelyn, thank you to you and the team. And I just also want to say, Lisa, thank you, Manager of Communications, just for all of you who be here, and also John Corbellini, who's not here, but who has always been an impressive director and not only loves to talk about planning, but governance and anything else local government. So it's been an absolute pleasure to work with you all. One thing I did neglect when we had a little gathering on Thursday night was to say thank you to John, my husband. This wouldn't be possible without John, because all of council business happens at 6 p.m. And if you don't have a partner that's on board with that while you're raising children that were as young as 3 when this all started, couldn't do it without John and his enduring support for me in this role. That has just been so appreciated. And also want to thank our boys who have had mum away many nights of the week and on weekends. And when they were little, they loved coming to events, but not so much as they've become teenagers. So time to spend more time with Connor and Eddie. I also wanted to just mention my dad, Kevin, and my sister, Andrea, who are also Vincent residents. It'll be family members and friends who will have to continue to put up with me after this 10-year stint. So just in relation to council, I'd like to say a huge thank you to all of you in this room, to acknowledge past and present councillors, to all of those I've served with through the 10 years, and I have said personal thanks to many of those people who I've seen to say thank you to. I think we've been incredibly fortunate to work with a committed and talented bunch of council members, each with something unique to bring, all who share a great passion for the City of Vincent community, our parks, our open spaces, our sustainable future, and our connection with the people that we represent. As I reflect on the 10 years, I believe we've overwhelmingly achieved a collegiate, future-focused approach with a unified desire to tackle the big issues which confront or inspire our community. We have a reputation in local government as being a positive, progressive and innovative local government, and we're happy to be the blueprint for local government reform on transparency. We've achieved a lot together, and I've spoken about some of that when I announced I'd be finishing my term. But what I wanted to just mention was some very recent things that those of us here in this room have achieved together. Underground power. Who'd have thought that we'd be able to deliver underground power across the whole of the City of Vincent? It's an incredible achievement to be able to bring that home to the City of Vincent and to now have a plan to know that it's deliverable and that we can afford to underwrite this. The smaller things like renaming Banks Reserve to Wundulia, something I'm incredibly proud of. That's something that we have been aiming to do for a long time. And sometimes it does take time in local government to do things, but to be able to announce that that will be consulted upon as soon as we're out of caretaker was really something important and special. To finally secure the elusive $3 million for the Litter Stadium change rooms and to now have completed the tender process so that those change rooms are actually going to be built. And to connect Litter Stadium to Britannia Reserve by bringing out the bulldozer and doing it quite cheaply and easily without having the $1 million landscape architecture price tag. We've hosted the Waffle Grand Final and the FIFA Women's World Cup. We've advertised a Leederville car park proposal after 2 years' work, just as the Property Council named Leederville as the #1 location in Perth for transit-orientated development. We supported the Uluru Statement from the Heart and the Voice. And as mentioned, this is really important as we continue our reconciliation work with our Brudia Elders Group and our community. And the latest initiative, something that I'm really pleased to announce tonight, and I've been given approval to announce this because Council has a resolution on this, is that Main Roads has given us the green light to go 40 kilometres an hour on all of our local neighbourhood roads. So that is something that that this council and previous councillors have worked towards for many, many years. And to have that news from Main Roads is really, really fantastic. We're currently at 40%, but we will be allowed to go to 40 Ks on all local access roads, not distributors, not our major corridors, as our council resolution sought to attempt some months prior. So tonight we do bid farewell to some of our long-serving councillors, and it would be remiss of me not to say a few words about that. So Councillor Susan Gontaszewski, our Deputy Mayor, the best Deputy a Mayor could ask for. You've been an incredible part of our team, incredibly respected by your peers and by community members. We really appreciate your strategic thinking, your enormous capacity to get across complex issues and to come up with beautifully pragmatic solutions. We know you've always read every page of the council agenda and that you are completely across your brief. Community members often tell me how impressive you are in your communication, the way you understand the issues and make such considered decisions. You understand the value of quality public policy, which is informed by evidence and community engagement. And you have had a passion for assets sustainability, a commitment to strategy, risk and compliance, the bread and butter that all of us as council members need to get across. But it is extended well beyond to a passion for parks and public spaces. And I think just one example of that is the fact that 50 car bays in Frame Court will become an additional park in the heart of Leederville, and that's thanks to the Gontaszewski amendment. You're instrumental, along with Councillor Hallett, in smoke-free town centres. You've been a defender of the commercialisation of the public realm, whilst sharing a passion for vibrant public places. I think you'll be remembered for your push for greater female sports participation, something that you came to us with, where you wanted to see more equality in the playing fields and in the reserves of Vincent. And this small gesture had a huge impact well before FIFA Women's World Cup came to town. And today I've been meeting with Jason Marocchi of Perth Soccer Club to say how on earth can he accommodate the burgeoning girls and women's teams that are lining up to join and play soccer at Perth Soccer Club. And Floreat Athena already have that problem. It's happening across all of our clubs, including at the Cardis. Thank you so much, Councillor Gontaszewski, for so ably representing us at JDAP, at Audit Committee, on the CEO Performance Review Panel. We know that your future is bright and that you are an incredible leader, and we wish you all the best in your future. Now to Councillor Loden, another 8-year stint. Councillor Loden, you will forever be known for bringing sustainability to the front and centre, whether it's facing off climate change to dabbling in divestment. Your focus has always been there. You convinced us to declare a climate emergency, and you showed us that net zero emissions by 2030 was absolutely within our reach. You single-heartedly increased our tree canopy one development application at a time. You've always played a highly engaged role in the Sustainable Advisory Group, now at the moment called STAG, which I still find incredibly funny. Your passion for reconciliation has driven more meaningful actions in our reconciliation action plan so that we actually do the thing, like the procurement and the employment. And you always reminded us that cyclists need a safe place on our roads. As an engineer with a gift for numbers, you've kept us future focused on long-term financial planning, and you've shared the passion for asset planning. And you couldn't help but love a tender process. So Dan, that's a really incredible lot of things that you have done here. So I've lost my words now, but you have been a really fantastic contributor and you've made a difference. So I just want to say thank you very much, Councillor Dan Loden, for 8 years of service to our community. I'd also like to acknowledge Councillor Ross Iapolo, Councillor Ashley Wallace and Councillor Suzanne Warner, all of who are at the end of their terms, some hoping to continue, some retiring. Councillor Iapolo, thank you very much for your 2 years of service to the City of Vincent and to our community. We know as a corporate professional that you've brought some really great business acumen to the role. We've really appreciated your thorough review of the budget, finances and projects. And we want to thank you for your service as Deputy Chair of the Audit Committee, where I think that's just been somewhere that you've really put a lot of time into. Also want to say thank you to you as a member of the CEO Performance Review Panel and also as Welga Zone, Central Zone representative. We know it's been hard and that you've worked hard during your 2 years on council whilst running your own business. And we thank you for that time that you've given to the City of Vincent and to the community and wish you all the very best in your future endeavours. Councillor Wallace, over 4 years of service. I just want to say thank you so much for representing us at the JDAP, where you've done such a great job of bringing a knowledge of planning together with a compassion for community interest. I want to thank you for your role on the Audit Committee, for the Tamala Park Regional Council, and also at Welga Central Zone. Really appreciate all of your inputs. Ash, thank you so much. And Councillor Warner, thank you so much for your service on the Arts Advisory Group and the RAP Working Group. Thank you for bringing your working knowledge of the arts and film to the City of Vincent, and also your knowledge of small business to your role on council. And for our continuing councillors who will be here remaining, whatever happens on Saturday, I just want to say to Councillor Hallett, Councillor Castle and Councillor Alexander, thank you so much. We wish you all the best and we thank you for your continuing custodianship of the City of Vincent Council and for your community leadership at the City of Vincent. Thank you. Would any councillors who are departing like to say a few words? Councillor Gontaszewski.
Thank you, Mayor Cole. I think it would be remiss of me, given that you have just spoken so eloquently about all of us who are departing or at the end of their terms and our ongoing councillors, not to say a few words about you as Mayor. Had a few opportunities to do this recently, and I just keep circling back to a couple of things. I think being a mayor is a hard job. It's a 24/7 job. But even knowing that, and even knowing those who have come before you in the big chair, I think that anyone that has sat in this chamber or met you or worked with you over the past 10 years would have to acknowledge that your work ethic is astounding. You apply yourself so capably to the role and to all its facets. I believe that your high professional standards, your ethics, your work ethic, and your care and compassion for the community has made us a better council under your leadership. And I think that you have certainly fulfilled the role of public spokesperson for the city in a manner that reflects everything that we know about what our city wants to be. We want to celebrate our diversity. We want to be progressive, transparent, and accountable. And we want to make progress, put good out into the world. So you have taken that and fully inhabited the role of mayor. You've brought all of that to us. I think that I am so pleased that you were able to make that announcement about the speed reduction on our local streets tonight, because I would thank you for your ongoing advocacy to bring that change to Vincent. It is an example of how you have conducted yourself as mayor throughout your time here, where it has always been about the journey we go on together, where we will take something and we will think about where we want to be, but we're also going to think about how we're going to get there. We're going to do a smaller trial. We're going to start to expand it. We're going to build on those professional relationships that we've developed through time on council to advocate for our end goal. And we will relentlessly pursue the strategy so that we can get to where we want to be, knowing that it is in line with community sentiment. This is something that both contributes to our goals around safety, but it also absolutely is a contributor to bringing people back onto the streets, to making a safe environment for pedestrians, for cyclists, for families, and for residents, which is so important in terms of being able to make our public spaces spaces for community. So I'm so happy that we've had that announcement. There's been so many successes over the past 10 years. And I would like to say thank you very much from myself and for council. In terms of my departure, I just would like to say that I've felt very privileged to be part of this council over the past 8 years. I didn't come to council with any bright ideas or burning agenda or any axe to grind. I came because I loved where I lived and I wanted to make a contribution, and I hope I've done that. As with any complex system, it all looks very streamlined and simple and perfect when it's going well. But I've really absolutely loved getting to know all of the work that goes into making that seamless experience and making Vincent such a great place to live. By Team Vincent, of course, but also by council and the community members that play such an active role as well. In reflecting on a hard week, I think that there will be more of a role for local government in the future than there is now. The expectations will be higher and it will be more important for local government to deliver, whether that is around managing our climate transition, providing social supports and encouraging and fostering a sense of community in uncertain times, or ensuring that we continue to walk the path for reconciliation. I wish you all the best as you go on that journey. I would just like to say thank you to the community for giving me the opportunity to represent you for the last 8 years. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Gontaszewski. Thank you for your very kind words, but also for your reflections on the role of local government. I just think that's really insightful and very apt when we are where we are this week. Councillor Loden, you have an audience. We're expecting it to be very good.
We'll see. Thank you, Mayor Cole. So I wrote a poem. For those of you less artistically inclined than me, this poem applies an internal rhyme scheme with 8 stanzas on a repeating basis. according to Google anyway. So bear with me here.
Can I just say, I'm so glad this is being recorded.
For prosperity. Community guy, did we really elect that guy? Jeez. So climate emergency is the way. First council in WA. Matt Buckles, Jimmy Murphy, Josh T, John Kerry. Net zero 2030, tailpipe emissions no longer dirty. Organics not in landfill, 10% emissions gone a thrill. Solar in at BD Park, no one sitting in the dark. Renewable energy PPA, lowering costs to win the day. EV charging into place, starting slow is not a race. Next step's the community getting to zero quickly. You can't stop the progress. It was always happening since the world's been turning. You can't stop the progress. No, we didn't start it and we will not fight it. Zero waste by 28, going strong, it's not too late. Introduced FOGO, commercial waste a no-go. Kitchen caddy on countertops, now it's part of standard ops. Smaller bins are everywhere, a third the space, what a dare. Verge Valet underway, plus less waste every day. Upcycling's the next step, it's tough but a good bet. Circular economy sounds really good to me. Incineration, no way. What more do I have to say? You can't stop the progress. It was always happening since the world been turning. You can't stop the progress. No, we didn't start it and we will not fight it. Uluru comes from the heart, symbolic gesture, but it's a start. Emma Cole, Lane McD, Ros Harley, Susie G. Employment and business targets set, 3% quite challenging yet. Renaming places Noongar names, City of Woodchuck's the real game. Marriage plebiscite, what a joke, but it got through, so I am stoked. Citizenship ceremony removed, now we're getting in the groove. Referendum was not yes, now we need to do our best. Not finished with Australia Day, celebrations are not okay. You can't stop the progress, it was always happening since the world's been turning. You can't stop the progress, no we didn't start it and we will not fight it. Emma's Mayor, it's a thing, England's got a new king. Jonathan Hallett, Susie Warner, Alex Castle, Ron Alexander. Braveheart at the paddo, tried to keep on the down low. Beta Park is falling down, fossil fuel divestment now. Tender criteria is everywhere, qualitative and quantitative, oh yeah. Too many buildings everywhere, toilets out if we dare. Food forest working hard, too hard, tool library in our backyard. Raising rates to pay for it all, going up, hope we do not fall. You can't stop the progress because we're all aligned and we've got the time. You can't stop the progress. Yes, we're all committed and the community's with it. POS-NOM in 2018, progress made that can be seen. Ross Iapolo, Joe Fatakis, Sally Smith, Ash Wallace. Converting roads to reserves, cheap to create in the burbs. Land sales to fund the way, challenging to the community any day. Mandating trees in private domain will look good despite the pain. Power going underground by 28, it will be sound. Bikes everywhere. Cars are mad, but do we care? After 8 years, know what's in store and I can't take it anymore. But you can't stop the progress. It was always happening since the world's been turning. You can't stop the progress. No, we didn't start it and we will not fight it. But more seriously though.
No, we're going to just pause.
To my council colleagues, I'm really proud of what we've been able to achieve these last 8 years together. And I think there's some really powerful things that we've done there. And for those of you that are hanging around, lean into the joy of this experience because you are here for a fleeting period of time, so take the opportunity to do something with it. To David, the exec and the staff, thank you and sorry. Thanks for all the work. It's only because of the effective government that goes on behind the scenes, the 98% of stuff, the roads, the footpaths, the mowing the grass, the trimming the trees, collecting the rubbish, even the raising of the rates that we do, that is done well on a day-to-day basis, that we have the credibility to kind of do some of the 2%ers or 1% of things that we get to do in the chamber here. So that's very much appreciated. Apologies, because I said this the other day, but I have the highest number of unsuccessful amendments of any council member, according to one of the executive directors, which is well appreciated by me. But I also have the highest number of successful amendments. And every time I'm successful, somebody within the administration lets out a great deep groan. And after 8 years, I've probably managed to annoy nearly every single member of staff somewhere along the way. So sorry about that. Couldn't help myself. To the community, thank you for having faith in me 8 years ago to take on this role. It's been a really great privilege. and also 4 years ago for none of them deciding to stand against me, because clearly I was doing such an amazing job that I got re-elected unopposed. That's my story. I'm sticking with it. It's been an incredible privilege for me and something that I'll appreciate for the rest of my life. And finally, to my family, my wife Fiona, who's here tonight. The last council meeting she attended was when I got sworn in. So it's been 8 years. And my 3 kids, Aiden, Dylan, and Ethan. My daughter was born the day after I got sworn in to council. And it's her 8th birthday on Friday. So looking forward to spending some time with her and the rest of our kids. But I did want to acknowledge that whilst I've been here every Tuesday night for 8 years, Fee's been at home looking after our 2 and then 3 kids, putting them to bed every night. I guess I've received recognition for the contribution that I've made, and I wanted to recognise her contribution there, which is probably in many ways a little bit more challenging at times than what I do sitting here in the chamber. So just wanted to make that point as well. Thanks for coming. Love you, hun. That's all I have to say. So thanks very much.
Thank you so much. Bravo, Councillor Loden. Poetry it is. Councillor Upload, do you have any poetry that you wish to contribute this evening?
Thanks, Mayor. I don't want to out-trump Councillor Loden, but I don't have a poem, but I have plenty of material for a future TV show. It's The Office meets Parks and Recreation. No, seriously. Yeah, and all characters are fictional and not based on real persons. Seriously, I just want to say I felt echo some of the sentiments I said on Thursday night, and that is that I feel incredibly humbled and honoured to represent ratepayers and residents in the city of Vincent. I decided to run 2 years ago purely on the basis of providing something back to community, and my intentions have always been bona fide in that I wanted to help represent and be the voice for residents. And I felt in my own mind I've done that. So I'm proud of the time that is required to do this job properly. And that for me is reading the materials and occasionally asking the hard questions. But like I said, it's always come from a place of bona fide intentions with the community in the forefront of my mind and rationale. This is more a comment for future councillors. I think I underestimated, I found the experience incredibly illuminating, and it was a great learning experience. And I put my hand up and say that I definitely underestimated the amount of work that is required. And I think that people who take this role seriously should understand that there is an incredible amount of material that needs to be read. There's an incredible amount of time that needs to be dedicated to the issues facing our residents, and I think no one should take those responsibilities lightly. And lastly, I think what's really important here is that the decisions we make here collectively as a majority, whether you're in a dissenting opinion or whether you are part of the majority to vote in favour for something or against, I think these decisions can have reverberations into the future. So I think they are really important decisions. I think that even though some of us are departing, I think it's important that we are still accountable for our decisions made during our term. And I feel proud of the decisions that I've made and the questions that I've asked. And if that has meant that some of these meetings has gone a little bit longer, I apologise, but I'm just trying to make sure that I'm always making impartial and informed decisions. So now I have to say thank you to my wife because everyone else has. So to Anna, who encouraged me to run, but also probably didn't dissuade me from retiring, given the amount of work. But I want to thank her for all her support, and she's thankful that I have more Tuesday nights at home. So thanks to the administration, thanks to David, thanks to my fellow councillors and to all the community that I guess elected me in the first place, but also who have engaged with me over my term to as a sounding board for issues or to represent their views. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Uplow. Well, lovely speeches all round, and we do still have some
Can I make
council.
a couple of comments?
Oh,
So-
you want to comment too? Well, I was sort of angling for departing, but I guess it's possible.
It's 3 paragraphs.
Oh, no, go for it. No, if you have material prepared, I would like
It's
everyone to
not a
say what they
problem.
need to say.
Councillor Loden's poem is the perfect accompaniment to the interpretive dance that I've prepared, describing my experience over the last 4 years. What a coincidence. No, I just wanted to say it's been an absolute privilege, honour and pleasure to work with everybody in the room over the last few years. Thanks to all of the councillors past and present and our fearsome but fair mayor. It's been really affirming and inspiring to work with such a talented, committed, representative, innovative, charismatic, funny, beautiful group of people. And thanks as well to the fantastic group of people in administration, a group far too large to list now, whose hard work we get to both critique and take credit for. I think the community can be proud that the city is in good hands.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wallace. I like that you described the council in all those ways, including beautiful. Councillor Warner, to be fair, this is now all councillors at the end of the term.
So it's an all in. Thank you. I just wanted to thank everyone for the honour of being able to sit here and be a part of the community and represent the residents and the businesses and to be able to participate. So thank you so much to everyone who's enabled me to do that and to everyone who's helped me along the way. And I keep my fingers crossed that I'll be here again next month. Thank you.
Thank you all. Good luck to all of those who wish to return, and we will now move on with our final business as this term of council. So we'll hand over now to the CEO for declarations of interest.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Cole, just the one declaration of interest as per the briefing last week from yourself, Mayor Cole, financial interest in relation to item 9.2, which is the amendment to the Municipal Heritage Inventory 40 Guildford Road, Mount Lawley, noting that the land is owned by the West Australian Planning Commission and that Mayor Cole is a paid commission member and also sits on the WAPC's Executive Finance and Property Committee that deals with property matters. Mayor Cole's not seeking approval to participate in the debate, nor remain in the chambers, nor vote on the matter. That's the only declaration for tonight.
Thank you very much, CEO. Are there any other declarations that council members wish to make at this point? Okay, thank you. All right, so council members, that means that we will have to pull out item 9.2, but in addition to that item, I'll go around the table to see if there are other items that you wish to debate this evening. Councillor Hallett, Councillor Castle, Councillor Wallace, Councillor Uplow.
Yes, 9.1, 9.2, 11.1, 11.2 and 12.1.
Councillor Warner, Councillor Loden, Councillor Alexander, Councillor Gondaszewski. No, okay. So, CEO.
Could I just clarify, Councillor Apollo, could you just repeat those items?
9.2, I think was mentioned already. 9.1,
Yeah.
11.1, 11.2 and 12.1.
Apologies. Also, we do need to call out 10.1, absolute majority decision required on the animal amendment local law.
Through you, Mayor Cole, the items that are being proposed to be moved en bloc are as follows. The item numbers 9.3, 11.3, 11.4, 11.5 and 12.2.
Thank you, CEO. Can I please have a mover and seconder to move the on-block items? Moved by councillor Warner, seconded by councillor Wallace. All those in favour? I declare the on-block items carried. So the first item on the agenda for debate this evening is 9.1, which is 54 Lincoln Street, Highgate, proposed alterations and additions to a single house. Can I please have a mover for this item? Councillor Apollo, did you want to move this given that you've called it out? Moved by councillor Apollo, seconded by councillor Loden.
Okay, I just got a question for administration. Has any of the other 6 heritage listed police cottages ever submit a DA involving a second story addition? And if so, what was the outcome?
Through you, Mayor Cole, I would need to confirm previous records of approvals for these properties. As exists on site, there is no 2-story additions to the rear of any of those cottages.
The only other question I have on this one is the administration and the DRP member made some comments and assessments regarding the upper story extension, the cultural significance of the site in respect to the visual prominence from the street, but it didn't make any other comment in relation to whether a second story addition would have in some other ways affected the cultural significance of the site. Could you provide any comment there that wasn't in the commentary for the agenda?
Through you, Mayor Cole, nothing else to add to the report in terms of the DRP member comments. That is because the statement of significance relating to the heritage listing speaks to its presentation to Lincoln Street, which is the principal frontage. The 2-story addition is to the rear of the property, and that is the crux of the comments received from the DRP member that is expertise in the heritage conservation field. So that is the primary reason for its acceptance.
I have no other questions, but I do want to talk to it. So if there's no other questions.
It's okay, you can lead straight into your debate.
Thank you. So I guess for me, the issue of contention here as to whether I'm favouring to support this or not is the deemed to comply provisions are irrelevant for me. I mean, there's only one that doesn't satisfy the deemed to comply provisions in relation to this, the setback, the walls. So to me, though, my understanding is that in addition to that, what we're asked here to decide upon is whether the planned alterations satisfy the qualitative design principles and local housing objectives and outcomes contained within the Heritage Management Policy and the Borough Charter. The cultural significance of these cottages appears to extend beyond the sole consideration of the streetscape presentation of the second story extension. So whether or not you can partially see the second story extension from the streetscape, my questions here and my cause for concern is that the only and sole criteria for whether we should approve this or not. So when I reviewed the Heritage Management Policy in the Borough Charter, it first referred to the cultural significance of the cottages, and this was contained in the Statement of Significance that was issued as part of its heritage assessment, and it talks about what is significant about these cottages, and I quote: "The police cottages are a rare row of 7 identical single-story, single-fronted detached cottages in the Federation Georgian style dating back from 1892. The row has retained a high level of integrity and is important for the streetscape and the character of the area and site, as this site documents police cottages from the late 1800s. In the Part 4 of the Heritage Management Policy, it mandates that the development is to comply with the Statement of Significance. outlined in that heritage assessment. It also under P2 states that alterations and additions to places of heritage value should be respectful and compatible with the existing fabric of the remaining cottages. And this development should not set an unwarranted precedent that materially changes that character of its unique row of dwellings. Turning to the Borough Charter, Article 22.1, it makes clear that the proposed work is new work and not a restoration. Being readily identifiable, that being the second story, it does not automatically make new work sympathetic to the place. New work must consider siting, bulk, form, scale, character, colour, texture and material, and is only permitted where it does not distort or obscure the cultural significance of the place or detract from its interpretation and appreciation. The second story, fundamentally in my mind, should come into consideration not just from streetscape. It talks about the material. It is a material aspect of the cottages. If the statement of significance had not highlighted the words rare row of 7 identical single-story, single-fronted detached cottages, this would be an easy decision for me. The other thing I want to make a point, and I think the City of Vincent and this council is really sensitive and rightly acknowledges the historical significance of Indigenous issues and sites. And I think that our sensitivity and obligation also extends to the value to protect aspects of other heritage sites. And this would include dwellings or structures that are listed on our heritage list. This is something that relates to the cottages of early settlers, particularly the police, with a police station that's across from these cottages. And like I mentioned, it dates to the 1800s. I found it somewhat perplexing that that the commentary here, both in the assessments from administration and the DRP, didn't talk about the cultural significance of these dwellings from a perspective of outside of just a streetscape. And there is a conflicting comment about whether the second story addition, the planned second story addition, is visible from the streetscape. In one paragraph it says it's not, and then in another spot it says that it is, but it's not material. So, I think, I mean, I'm probably, given that there's no other questions, I'm sure I'm in a dissenting opinion. So, but at this stage, I do feel some level of discomfort to support the officer's recommendation in its current form. I do value heritage sites, just as I highly value the heritage nature of Indigenous sites and issues and culture. I put those in the same basket. So I won't support it in its current state, but I'm not going to put people through an alternate motion, because I'm sure it sounds like I may be in the minority. So the only other comment, which is more obiter, it relates to the city's community and stakeholder engagement policy. 4 of the 5 submissions received were actually against this proposal, and our policy stipulates that amended plans do not need to be re-advertised. The logic for that under the policy is that it considers new departures from the deemed to comply standards in deciding whether to re-advertise. But there is this second requirement that we are needing to consider, and that is the design principles and local housing objectives are relevant, and therefore I guess my point on that is that perhaps the CEO and future council may wish to consider the reasonableness of that policy and whether it should change, so that any changes to a plan or DA would have to be re-advertised in relation to the fact that it could affect its design principles and housing objectives. Thank you.
Councillors, Councillor Loden.
Thank you, ma'am. Understand what you're saying there, Ross. I guess the question for me in my mind is whether or not we are retaining the heritage, and whether that addition at the rear of the property is significantly impacting the heritage of that site. When I look at this from the street, what I see is that there is a small amount of that development that you can see at the rear, but it is not, I don't see that as significantly impacting the heritage of that building. And part of this is also, I guess, recognizing or appreciating that we need to be able to allow people to do developments of these properties, because that will actually help with the retention of that heritage site. Without the ability to do some form of a development and extension to the rear of the property that's sympathetic to the front nature of the site, the issue you get is that it's potentially going to become dilapidated or poorly maintained, because it tends to be used for renters instead of being the family home. If you facilitate this extension, this then makes sure that the property is going to be renovated and well kept up, and actually helps to secure that heritage site for the longer term, because this is someone's home that they've spent a bunch of money on upgrading, and they'll likely live on there for 10 plus years, and retain that heritage at the front. So from my perspective, I don't see this as gross impact on the heritage of that specific house or the overall heritage value of this precinct. We do want to retain that, obviously, and I've numerous times advocated for the retention of that as well, and refused applications where they've had too significant an impact on that heritage. I will listen to the debate. I'm interested in what other councillors have to say on the matter, but broadly from my perspective, I'm supportive of the officer recommendation.
Councillors, any further comments? Councillor Wallace.
Thanks, Mayor Cole. Can I just ask the executive manager, just the assessment that it's deemed to comply, just wondering if, a tick in deemed to comply is appropriate, given that like many aspects of the heritage management policy are qualitative in nature instead of quantitative, where, the other deemed to comply assessments are normally made.
Through you, presiding member, that's a fair observation. In the detailed assessment section of the report that follows on from that, it also does go on to set out that the heritage management policy sets out acceptable development standards, and those have been satisfied. However, it still does call upon a performance assessment, and which is detailed in the officer comments. So though it's a tick because it's met the acceptable development standards, there has still been an assessment undertaken against the performance criteria as required by the policy construct, and that's included in the officer comments.
All right, thank you. Nothing further.
Councillors, any further comments? I might just make a comment in relation to the re-advertising. Just in last week at the briefing, I did ask a question, manager, around whether, because anyone who's made a submission during consultation will always be notified when the item is coming to council. And I did ask the question as to whether there'd been any further correspondence or had heard back from any of those submitters, and manager did notify that there had been one response and that they had felt that this had been that this had actually been met their expectations, I guess would be. And I can just ask, has there been any further contact since last Tuesday night?
To you, Mayor Cole, no, I'm not aware of any other
Okay.
submissions.
I think the issue with re-advertising comes down to the fact that it is a statutory process with a statutory time frame, and that the issue where it's not re-advertised is when the fresh changes have responded to issues raised during community consultation and have reduced the impact of issues that have been raised during consultation. So if the changes that were made were to go in the opposite direction and make it less compliant, etc., then the city would stop the clock and cause that to be re-advertised. But in the situation where changes are responsive to community feedback and that the development is brought more in line with the deemed to comply, the normal process would be that it wouldn't be re-advertised, but that residents would be notified and sent the link to the report so that they can review that and they can attend council meetings, can email councillors, can come to public question time, etc. So there still is opportunity for residents and community members to continue to engage in that process and to let us know what they think about the changes that have been made. So I just thought I would just put that forward. Councillors, any further debate on this item? Okay, I'll put the item. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried with councillor Opolo voting against. Item 9.2, I have a financial interest, so I'll ask the deputy to come and chair for this one. Thank you, councillor Gontraszewski.
Item 9.2, amendment to the municipal heritage inventory, 40 Guildford Road, Mount Lawley. Can I have a mover and seconder for this item? Moved councillor Iapolo, seconded councillor Loden.
Thank you. Just a question for administration. Does this decision need to be an absolute majority because it's reversing a 2007 decision of this council, or for planning, it's always just recycled back to a separate decision?
Through you, Chair, it would be the latter.
Yep. Can I go? Yep. Okay. Second question. Can a future road widening occur by like the main roads if this property is not removed from the city's municipal heritage inventory?
Through you, Chair, road widening could still occur. There would need to be further consideration given to what the approach then is taken to the existing dwelling. Ultimately, there's a certain amount of road widening that is required, and this is a mechanism to enable it, but it would then be available to the state government to consider what alternatives they have and what approach they want to take to enable that road widening.
No further questions, but I do want to talk to it as part of debate.
Please do so.
Thank you. So the justification here in the officer's recommendation seems to effectively hinge on 2 points. The first is the rationale of the widening of the road reserve, because it was claimed in here in the commentary that it would fundamentally alter the context of the relationship of the dwelling to the streetscape, diminishing its authenticity, original character, and historic value. Now, whether this is true or not is kind of not discussed in the materials, as far as I could see. But to me, it seems that argument seems somewhat superfluous because the road reserve is not guaranteed to occur. And based on my response to that question, the main roads can do it anyway. So I think from that perspective, that doesn't need to be part of my consideration. The second point in trying to determine whether we should support this application was the fact that it was mentioned that the property is run down. And from that perspective, administration's position notes that while the poor state of a place should not itself be a reason for removal from the MHI, it did quote something from the Heritage Impact Statement prepared by Hocking Heritage and Architecture in 2023, noting that this consultancy was acting on behalf of the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage, who are looking to demolish the site for social housing. In that Heritage Impact Statement, the consultants stated that, or claims that, the structural integrity of the place failed to the point where it cannot be rectified without the removal of the majority of significant fabric. But it's also noted that its assessment was not supported by a structural engineer's report, evidencing any assessment of condition or whether the remediation of the building would impact on its significance. So the 2 points that are really run as part of the argument as to why we should support the application, to me, is there isn't substantive support or strong support to back one of those two reasons. So I guess I'm not sure. I'm a little bit unsure about the grounds here for reversal. Moreover, the perception could be here that the key motivation to allow it is to widen the road subject to reserve and to allow for future demolition to make way for social housing, neither of which I feel are valid grounds to support taking this property off the heritage list. So I'm interested to hear what other people have to say on this. I do feel a little bit uncomfortable about it. Of course, you know my position on heritage. So the fact that this council in 2007 said and that it shouldn't be removed. So we're effectively reversing that decision or changing or pivoting our position on it. So I just felt that the grounds in the application I felt were weak in some ways. So I was interested in hearing if anyone else wishes to contribute to debate.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I probably tend to agree with you on the road widening argument. I would like to hear administration's comments back from what was just said, though, if you had a view or, I guess, perspective on those arguments were raised.
Through you, Chair, the lot and it forms part of an entirety of 34 lots fronting along Guildford Road and East Parade that was acquired by the state government to enable future road widening. This is historic. Since 2007, further planning has been undertaken in terms of road widening requirements, and included in the officer report is a copy of the main road's additional land road widening requirements, and that would ultimately inform the total primary regional road reservation. As part of that process, the additional land needed for that road widening would need to be excised off as part of a subdivision approval process, and that is being pursued separately with the state government. In completing that works, it would mean that the frontage of the heritage building would need to be removed, and that is where the commentary comes in from both the applicant as well as the DRP member in terms of the consideration of the impact of removing the frontage of a heritage dwelling. That is where the discussion alludes to making changes that are irreversible in terms of impacting the heritage fabric of the dwelling. As far as the city's policy setting and when the city would contemplate removing or deleting a property from the city's MHI, there's three circumstances that's set out in the officer report. It's around where it's erroneous in terms of the cultural heritage significance. The second one is around the condition in terms of being in a poor state. The third one relates to the significance of the heritage building and alludes to a number of criteria, one of which is the location of the building on the site being a challenge in terms of its retention. That is the reason for administration's support of the property's removal from the city's MHI that's set out in the officer comments. Ultimately, it would require the demolition of the heritage, or it would impact the heritage fabric of the dwelling. And on that basis, that is the change since council's consideration in 2007 in terms of the road widening requirement. That wasn't in place then in terms of the additional road that would be required. So on that basis and against the policy setting, administration is of the view that it should be removed from the MHI.
And the dilapidation provision, I mean, it looks pretty horrible in there. Is that not a basis as well, or is there a reason why that wasn't included?
Through you, Chair, administration's included a comment around that, acknowledging that it is in a degraded state, and that has, administration's view, been caused through neglect, hasn't been maintained, but it hasn't been demonstrated equally that it couldn't be restored. There hasn't been, for example, a structural engineer's report to demonstrate that the dwelling couldn't be remediated. So administration isn't of the view, or we are not satisfied that has been explored. So that doesn't form the reason for its removal from the MHI. although its location does.
Can I reserve my right to speak further? I'd be interested to hear what other council members have to say.
Certainly. Councillors? Councillor Wallace?
Is there any urgency to determine this? Like if we were to want to wait until the MRS amendment's gone through and subdivision applications potentially being made, is that an issue at all?
Through you, Chair, is there urgency? This forms part of state government's housing diversity pipeline. It's a project where it's an initiative where they're seeking to deliver affordable and social housing across the city. As I understand it, they are at a stage where they've gone out to market through an EOI, I think last year, and now effectively they're seeking to obtain detailed quotes or detailed proposals. So that is hinged on effectively deconstraining the site to allow the detailed proposals to be submitted. So I suppose, is it an issue potentially for the state government? Yes.
Can I just ask a follow-on question from that? Sorry, because I guess up until this point in time, we haven't really focused any of our discussion on deconstraining the site, although I'm sure that's been the undercurrent that a few people have been thinking about. Just the question though, in relation to the subdivision, from the Element report, and I should have brought my glasses tonight, it talks about the plan of subdivision currently being prepared for lodgement with WAPC. So could you just explain, like, does this need to happen before that decision on the subdivision would be able to be contemplated by the Planning Commission? Or is the Planning Commission authorised to make a decision on that subdivision, which would effectively then place the road reserve partway into the house? Like, what order do things have to happen in order to, I guess, be orderly and proper planning?
Through you, Chair, I think the last comment around orderly and proper planning, that's probably the crux of it in terms of the timing and the staging in liaising with the department officers. If the subdivision plan is submitted and that is progressed, inevitably, if there is not support for the removal or the demolition of this home, that would be problematic through the subdivision approval process. The department officers would seek to have considered the dwellings inclusion on the MHI first and effectively try to address its removal before trying to deal with that through a subdivision approval process. Is it possible? Perhaps, in terms of requiring certain works to be undertaken to enable a subdivision, which is to excise this portion off of the road widening. But that is not the preference of the department's officers in liaising with them. That's why they are seeking this approach, which would be in line with orderly and proper planning to deal with the MHI challenge first.
Any further questions, councillors? Councillor Cars? Oh, Councillor Wallace, you go on. Continue.
Yeah, thanks. Is there any kind of like engineering design drawings available for the planned extents of the road widening? I understand, I guess we're being asked to demolish this on the basis of a reserve being put in. But yeah, do we have any more detailed plans on an engineering design that would actually necessitate that, aside from part of it being in the nominated reserve? And I guess, sorry to add to that, I guess we saw significant pushback on Charles Street around intensification of traffic through the neighbourhood as well. And I guess community may have similar perspectives here. Thank you.
Through you, Chair, in short, no, we don't have detailed designs or engineering drawings to that detail. Ultimately, the process is for Main Roads, who is responsible for primary regional roads, to consider their land requirements effectively. And I think in the Element report that was referred to by the Chair, it includes that level of design of how much land would be required, and it shows it in the context of Guildford Road and how it interfaces to East Parade. That's the extent of the detail.
Thank you. I guess in the absence of any detailed road design and just kind of noting that this lot appears to be the point at which the road reserve widens significantly I guess I'd be interested to know whether Main Road's considered whether that widening at this particular point could just be bumped down by 2 lots to preserve an important part of the MHI. So yeah, I'd probably be keen to defer on that basis, but we'll see what everyone else says.
Councillor Castle.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I suppose a follow-on question on the timing. This is an application that has been made by the landowner, property owner. And just wanting clarification, is this subject to the statutory timeframes of all development applications? And I think last week you said was appealable to the SAT.
Through you, Chair, I'll clarify. My comment last week, I noted that this request initially came in as a development application proposal. There's a number of pathways that could be pursued to achieve an outcome. The state government submitted this as a development application in considering the different pathways and orderly and proper planning. It was pursued to initiate a request to remove the property from the city's MHI. That is not a development application. The development application is in abeyance. And so I won't speculate, but depending on the outcome of this, that would be an alternate process that could be pursued by the state government. And that does have a statutory timeframe to process, although that is on pause effectively for the time being. A request to remove property from the MHI does not have a statutory timeframe associated with it.
Thank you for that clarification. So I suppose it does remain available to the applicant to reactivate that application. If this was to be deferred or refused, that could be another pathway that could take, which would trigger those timeframes. In terms of if we are contemplating any delay or deferral, is there any indication as to the timing of the next stages for the subdivision and the road widening that's within, a known time frame for us to defer?
Through you, Chair, no, the timing, the extent of the timing details is contained in the accompanying report prepared by Element, but that does not prescribe a specific timeline.
Thank you. Look, I suppose based on that, I wouldn't support a deferral simply because there's nothing imminent that we can hang that deferral on to say we're waiting for this particular event to happen or a time frame that we can identify. I think our options should be approval or refusal, because a deferral will in effect be a refusal anyway. I have struggled with this. I asked a lot of questions last week, and I think I have a lot of concerns about the fact that this property has been allowed to get into this condition. I know that we've not specifically been talking about condition as a reason to potentially remove it from the MHI tonight, but it does remain that this property has been neglected for many, many years. There was a note in the briefing notes that there are options available to the city to issue notices, and I think that's definitely something that we need to be looking at in the future to consider why that wasn't done, and what attitude and approach we actually want to have to our heritage in the city, because seeing an application like this would suggest that a listing on the MHI is of little value or importance if it's not followed through on. Having said all of that, I read this report to indicate that the removal of the building through the road widening process is somewhat inevitable. And I do accept administration's justification for recommending to remove it, purely on the basis of the change in the condition, in the details of the location. and what is an important and significant project for the state government. I don't believe that us refusing this tonight will actually resolve in the retention of this building in the long term. And so I suppose taking a pragmatic approach, I will support it, but obviously with that strong note about the conditions that have led to this property being neglected, and very interested in investigating in the future how we can avoid that.
Councillors, Councillor Warner.
Thank you. Whilst I really don't hold out much hope for the future of this house, and I kind of feel its demise is imminent, I'm really not comfortable in taking an active part in making that happen. Once this is gone, it's gone. This house is nearly 120 years old. It's been the home of numerous families. I went and walked around the site, and it's got great bones, and it's absolutely bursting with stories and history. It's a proud part of our heritage. But it's also in a completely derelict state as a result of being neglected by its owner for years, and it's been absolutely trashed by passers-by. It was suggested at last week's briefing that neglecting buildings on the heritage inventory until they are so derelict it's easier just to remove them from the list could be a loophole in the system, and I think that might actually be something to consider there. It's a tremendous shame that something's been left to fall apart so that it can sort of be demolished without the due consideration that I think it really deserves. Like Councillor Wallace, I'd be supportive of a deferment, but if that's not really an active option, which Councillor Castle was quite clear on, which I also agree with, I can say that I do not support the recommendation to remove 40 Guildford Road from the Municipal Heritage Inventory. This request was made in 2007. The council at the time declined it. Sadly, in that 16 years, the condition of the house has just worsened considerably. I understand the recommendation to remove it is not based on the neglect of the house, but the possibility of the future roadworks. But I'm really disappointed that last 16 years have not seen the opportunity to pursue the upkeep of this house. The notices were not issued, as Councillor Castle mentioned, and I really think that's something we need to be looking into. So thank you for that.
Councillors. Councillor Iopolo.
Do I have the right to, my question is, do I have the right to close debate?
Not
So
until I've
mover.
spoken, or Councillor Hallett or Councillor Alexander if they wish to. But if you moved it, you can close debate at the appropriate time unless a procedural motion is forthcoming. Councillor Hallett, Councillor Alexander, otherwise I'm going to dive on in. Okay. I've shared the sense of sort of inevitability. I guess my question in relation to this is that what we're being asked to accept is that the land is required for road widening. If that goes ahead, then a portion of the property will sit within the road reserve, which is not, I would suggest, appropriate under a system of orderly and proper planning. So should that road widening need to occur, then the house would go. I guess listening to the questions from Councillor Loden and Councillor Wallace this evening in relation to the engineering design, etc., I guess I would be supportive of a deferral in this instance, not because I'm decision averse. I'm not really interested in kicking the can down the road to the next council, but I think I would imagine that within a month we would be able to get some engineering advice as to the appropriateness of the need to widen the road from potentially a engineering and traffic management perspective. I think the key question is, the road widening appears to be about creating a slip road a further slip road for left turn from Guildford Road onto East Parade. And the question is, does it need to start so far up Guildford Road? Does that actually need to happen from a Australian standards point of view, from a, you know, like volume of traffic point of view, from a vehicle safety point of view, etc. And I would say that there would probably be no reason that that advice couldn't be achieved, you know, like requested and provided within the next month. So I'd be supportive of a deferral should one come forward prior to the close of debate. Otherwise, if I'm asked to put my hand in the air on the basis of what I have before me, ultimately I accept that that there is, you know, likely to be a road widening, and I don't see any reason not to support it in that instance. It's really about best efforts from here, I think. But I won't be here in a month, so that's that's just one for you all. But yes, that would be all from me. Does anyone have any further questions? Or if you haven't spoken, does anyone wish to speak? Councillor Wallace?
Can I put a motion to defer this item, please?
Yes. Do you want to put some words around that?
Yeah, I'm happy to take suggestions from the executive manager, but I guess I'm seeking further advice from DPLH and Main Roads WA regarding the justification for widening in this particular location, supported by traffic studies and applicable standards, and potentially, and requesting some level of detailed design around what's proposed in this area that would necessitate demolition of this structure. Is that suitable? Cool.
Oh, we've had a procedural motion put. My understanding is that we don't do any, we're not doing any debate on that. We've had a motion to defer that's come forward. Councillors, we need a second. Are you seconding, Councillor Alexander, or did you want to ask a question?
I just wanted to add to it.
I don't know that that's not something that can occur unless you wanted to second. And do you mean you wanted to add to the request for information that's come forward through the request for deferral?
I wanted to ask what the alternatives are.
Okay. As we've had a procedural motion come forward, the option that will come before council will be to, if we get a seconder, would be to defer until the advice that Councillor Wallace has received is provided, or to not support the deferral, in which case we would go back to discussing the substantive motion. Is there a seconder for the deferral? Seconded by Councillor Warner. It being a procedural motion, there is no debate. Administration have requested a time frame, Councillor Wallace.
I mean, I don't have one, as long as it takes for them to provide that information. I don't feel a particular urgency to decide this matter, but if we need to apply one for their benefit, we can.
Through you, Chair, thank you. My advice would be perhaps prior to March 2024, just to enable enough time to gather that information if it isn't already available.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to include that in the reasons for deferral. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion before us to defer until no later than March 2024 to gather information from DPLH and Main Roads as per Councillor Wallace's wording. I will put it. All those in favour? All those against? That's passed with Councillor Castle voting against.
Anyone? I just want people positive bit on, like, give us some alternatives, don't just say game.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. I believe that will then conclude our strategy and development items for the evening. So we'll move to item 10.1, which is an absolute majority decision required, hence why we are bringing this one forward. It is the adoption of the Animal Amendment Local Law 2023. Could I please have a mover and seconder for this item? Moved by Councillor Wallace, seconded by Councillor Hallett. Councillor Wallace.
I really feel peer pressured into moving that one. You were staring
Yeah.
straight at me.
Trying to give you,
I don't
I need
actually
to
have
provide
anything prepared
moments
to
to
say on
shine.
this. Just, yeah, expressing my disappointment about some omissions, but understand the practicality of the situation that we're in. So support the motion.
That's all. Thank you for moving. Appreciate that. Seconder.
Thank you. Agree. It's essentially an administrative motion, but I guess, yeah, sharing disappointment that the state government hasn't acted on reviewing cat law to allow local government to take more ownership in this space.
Councillors, any further comments? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Declare it carried. That takes us to community and business services items. So 11.1 financial statements as at the 31st of August 2023. Can I have a mover and seconder for this item, please? Moved by Councillor Uplow, seconded by Councillor Wallace.
Just a couple of questions. The surplus position brought forward for 23-24 was 8 million compared to the adopted budget amount of 4 million. So it's an increase of 3 million. My question is that the commentary in this item talks about a 1.4 million variance, which relates to a higher than expected federal grant funding, but I didn't see any other commentary that explained the difference between the 4 million variance and the 1.4 as explained. Can we just have some high level comment about the remainder of the variance?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Cole. So the reason why there's no comment is because we're still going through the end of financial year and the audit is booked in 2 weeks from now. So we put some preliminary comments there to talk to the main reason for the issue. But yeah, essentially that grant was brought forward. At the beginning of June, the federal government said we wouldn't get any brought forward payment and they brought forward 100% late in June. So that's part of the issue. There's carry forwards of about $1 million, and then the rest would be higher revenue across fees and charges and some operational cost savings as well. So we'll unpack that further once the audit's completed later this year and then put an adjustment through mid-year budget review.
And just by way of confirmation, there's none of that variance relates to surplus for over budgeted capex that had already been accounted for at the mid-year budget when it was moved to the underground power reserve.
Through you, Mayor Cole. No, I don't have specifics. The carry forwards will be addressed as per the first quarter budget review. So there's $1 million worth of carry forwards, and there could be a number of reasons for those projects not being physically spent by 30 June. So we go through the end of year process and all the invoices have to essentially have the services done by 30 June to be accounted for in that financial year. So there's always going to be some spillover to the next financial year.
And just a second question. It relates to the outstanding rates debtors balance at 31 August. It was 28.7 million. And that compared to, this was 58% of the total compared to 46% for the same period last year. Can you just give me any explanation about what's driving that significant increase in outstanding rates debtors balance?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Cole. So that is purely a function of just the rates notices going out a bit later this year and the due date being the 1st of September. So when the rates notices get sent out is based on zip form where we sit in the queue, and we were pushed back a bit this year. So as at September, they're both about 40% outstanding. So we've caught it right up. There's about 2% difference at that point in time. So
thanks. No more questions, but I will contribute to debate.
Please just go ahead.
Obviously, one of my things that come up every year and something based on my professional background is that I do care about the budget, and I do care about, any perception of overrating ratepayers. The opening bat surplus, to the extent that that's growing, it would prima facie be support for the fact that either we're underspending, so we over budgeted, or we have favourable variances on the revenue, and I understand that it's a combination of the both of them. So it's more a comment that, just one of my pet subjects to, obviously there's concern there as a resident, not just as a councillor, that there's been a trend for growing opening surpluses and or underspend based on rates setting. And so it's a comment more than anything that I hope that we continue to make strides. I know we've made significant improvements in various aspects of finance with Reece coming on board, which I think is great. But I think that there is still we can always be better. That's where where I'm coming from with this. We can always be better at how we more accurately budget, which has a flow-on effect on the rate space and on the amount of rate increases that we might try to impose on our ratepayers. So a comment that I think it would be good if the future administration and future council give due regard to that issue. Thank you.
Councillor Wallace, do you wish to speak to the item? Was it you did second? No? Okay. Thank you. Any further comments in relation to the financial statements? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Item 11.2, authorisation of expenditure for the period 1st to 31st of August 2023. Moved by Councillor Iapolo, seconded by Councillor Loden. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a question. It relates to only one item, which is the supply and install of solar panels to the Department of Local Government down the road. It was 66,000. Can you just give some commentary about whether that is something that was required under the lease, whether it was reimbursable from the lessee, or and who benefits from the lower energy costs? I'm just trying to get a gauge as to why now to spend that money. It was a significant amount.
Through Mayor Cole, we have had an ongoing program to put solar panels on all city buildings throughout the city of Vincent. And we did agree on those panels as part of the most recent lease renegotiation with the Department of Finance, which is the tenant.
Yeah, that's great, because it is part of the renegotiation is part of the lease incentives, I guess, as to encourage them to renew their lease. Is that just to clarify that?
Through Mayor Cole, as part of the lease renegotiation, we agreed on a range of required or needed capital improvements and expenditure. For instance, we've allocated and committed to replacing all the lights in that building with LEDs, which also has a energy efficiency benefit, and we replaced the carpet and the like, and all those capital upgrades were agreed as part of a program at the last lease renewal.
And just the last question was who benefits from the lower energy cost? Is it do we contribute to the variable outgoing of the building, or is it to the extent the benefit of the lessee?
Through Mayor Cole, the lessee pays the outgoings.
Just a remark then, if I can, as part of debate, I think it's really important. The Department of Local Government is obviously run by a minister, and that minister was an ex-mayor. So I think it's just from a point of view of perception, it's always great that these.
Can I just correct you that the minister, if you're referring to the Honourable John Kerry MLA, he does not have any ministerial responsibilities for the Department of Local Government, Cultural Industries and Sport.
Oh, okay. I'll stand corrected. Thanks.
I recall that vote that we had around the funding, which was very painful for those of us that were on council at the time, because we were obliged to do it and kind of up against the wall, which was pretty poor. But this was one of those things that we were basically required to do. We went back multiple times in the negotiation because it was basically a whole heap of stuff that we were shelling out to their benefit, and not a great deal of benefit for the city, unfortunately. But that was the situation we found ourselves in at that time. But I'm supportive of the officer recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to follow up on a question that I asked at the briefing last week. It was in relation to the Wi-Fi use in Leederville, which does seem to be being utilised. Yeah, is there and I know it's not a question for tonight, but just in terms of going forward, is there any way of understanding whether they are a series of discrete users jumping in and jumping off, as opposed to, say, a person that's using or, using the Wi-Fi continuously for long periods of time? Just, I guess my question is really around, is the Wi-Fi being used widely and freely by a range of people, or could it be, is there enough data to show whether that's continuously being used by a small amount of people? I know that's a very difficult question to answer tonight, but that was the question that came to mind when I saw the response, which I thank the administration for.
Through Mayor Cole, we might be able to, if they identify repeat users, but the general approach is to make sure that the use of public Wi-Fi is as anonymous as possible, so as not to give out any details or provide any personal information of the users. And
no, I wouldn't want personal information of users. This is not some kind of 1984 type approach. It's really just to say that it would be interesting from the city's perspective to know whether they're funding public Wi-Fi for the broader public in a sort of general civic sense, or whether it's being utilised repeatedly by the same or similar logons, for want of a more technical term.
Through Mayor Cole, I can see if we can find out how many repeat users there are versus one-off users.
Thank you. You can tell the future council the response. Any further questions or comments in relation to authorisation of expenditure? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? I declare it carried unanimously. That takes us to item 12.1, outcome of advertising and adoption of amendments to the advisory group's policy. Can I have a mover and seconder for this item, please? Moved by Councillor Castle, seconded by Councillor Hallett. Nothing to say? Councillor Hallett? Any further debate? Councillor Opolo?
Just a question. Are these advisory groups the subject of this policy in receipt of funding from the City of Vincent? And is that annually? If so, is it annually or biannually, or how does that work?
Through the chair, these advisory groups are typically created for specific functions. So at the moment we have the Arts Advisory Group, the Children and Youth Group, the Sustainable Transport and something with a G group, advisory group, and the Reconciliation Action Working Group. So they're not funded groups, they're to inform the city's implementation of strategic policy.
Okay, and so there were some changes that were made, which I think in effect were making them more independent, I guess, because we didn't have a lot of involvement in their missions and statements, because I think in the past there was an officer who would review that, if I can stand corrected, but that's what I got from the reading. So if there's no funding, then I guess there's no professional indemnity issues because they're not being paid. I'm just trying to understand the legal relationship, because there was a whole lot of stuff that you've taken out of the policy which said they don't represent Vincent, they don't make decisions for us, blah blah blah, but that was all removed out of the policy. So I'm wondering, I guess the crux of the question here is, does removal of that from our policy, noting that they are advisory groups and advising the City of Vincent, does that create any professional indemnity obligations for the advice that they do issue, given that you have taken out a lot of that language that I guess is there to make clear that they're quite separate?
Through the chair, so the policy retains the provision that states that these are not decision-making groups. all decision-making rests with council, and council has not delegated any decision-making functions. All of the other provisions in relation to the establishment of the group and how the group is chaired and supported by administration, and the purpose is set, and minutes created and agendas managed by the administration, falls within the terms of reference. And those terms of reference are adopted by council when the community groups are appointed.
Councillor Uplow, have you concluded your questions? Okay, is there any further debate on this item? Okay, I'll put the item. All those in favour? I declare that carried. That was the last item that we were debating this evening. So on the final meeting of our term, I thank you all. Thank you for the lovely speeches this evening, and wish you all the best, whether that's in future endeavours or in the campaign outcome ahead next on Saturday night, and declare the meeting closed at 7:40 p.m. Thanks all.